This is the Paycheck to Daycheck Reselling Podcast.
I'm Liz.
And I'm Ashley.
Together, we have been making money online collectively for over 10 years.
Our mission is to help you start, learn, and grow a reselling business and to inspire you to turn your paycheck into a daycheck.
The world is changing, and we want to help you change with it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Paycheck to Daycheck podcast. Today we are going to be talking about a beginner's guide to garage sales and estate sales. So we've mentioned before that both of these are great options in finding inventory for your reselling business. And we wanted to do a little bit of a deeper dive into both of these, how to find them, how to have success with them, tips on negotiating. We're going to cover a lot of different things here, so buckle up.
I think the first thing is, how do you even find a garage sale to go to? Now, there are different websites that you can use, such as Craigslist, which I feel like Craigslist is kind of the OG of where you would go to find garage sales. It's still like they haven't updated it very well. Like it's very archaic to me. But there's also estatesales.net, estatesales.org. And then also options would be like Nextdoor, the Free Stuff app, Facebook Marketplace, local Facebook groups, driving around, and your local paper. So there are different ways. And I think that's can be one of the most challenging things with garage sales is not everybody posts in one place. So you kind of have to figure out in your area, where are people posting the most? And then definitely keep that on the back burner for when you are looking for garage sales.
Yeah, there used to be, well, there still is this amazing app. It was, it's called Yard Sale Treasure Map. And I think it was like a free download, and it used to be connected to Craigslist, but for some reason over the last few years, they've like disconnected. So it would take all of the garage sales that were posted on Craigslist and kind of put them all together in like this yard sale map for your area. And it was amazing. It was a wonderful tool. And I used it all the time, and it helped me create a route for like my Saturday garage sale, extravaganza. But now, because my area does not seem to use Craigslist to post their sales on as often as other areas do, there's just not a lot that shows up on that yard sale treasure map. Now, if you're having a garage sale or yard sale or whatever, you can add it manually to the map. And I know people still use that map to manually add sales that they want to attend. And also, it just helps them it just helps them create the most efficient route in sales that they want to hit that day. So it is still useful. Just unfortunately, it's not as useful, I don't think anyways, since it's not connected to Craigslist anymore, but that is also another tool. Real quick about, posts on Facebook. In, the posts that you see on Facebook, whether it's in like a garage sale, a local garage sale page, or on Facebook Marketplace, people are going to post photos, and sometimes they'll post a lot of information on what they have, like where the sale is, the address, the time, all that good stuff, any details that you need to know. So that is going to help you, get the information that you need to make the decisions on which sales to go to first. And if they post pictures, which is always helpful, it'll kind of help you to see, what they're going to have, the quality of the items, the number of items, and that sort of.
Yeah, I feel like the Facebook groups are kind of the way to go. So I know here in our area, we're in Apache Junction, and there's a buy-sell trade for Apache Junction. There's one for what's called Santiam Valley, which is south of here. That's where I see most people posting for garage sales. And I do like the pictures. Now, everyone sees those pictures, but it kind of allows you to say, okay, if you're just driving around and going to garage sales, you don't know what they're going to have. I know we've driven around, maybe they had like a bunch of kids' clothes, and it's like, we don't really sell that. So I like the idea of when people post and have the pictures, so that way you can kind of look and be like, oh, well, I can see that they have like a lot of shoes, or they have electronic. Just kind of helps you decide whether that garage sale will be worth it, because we've always talked about time is definitely valuable.
Okay, so let's start talking about some tips that you can use to make sure that you have a successful garage sale day. In my area, most of them are on Fridays and Saturdays. We rarely have any Sunday garage sales, and our thrift stores aren't open on Sundays around here for some reason. So you really need to make sure that you're, if you're in my area or an area that's similar, that you're organized, that you have a plan so you can hit as many sales as possible and get the good stuff that you want to purchase. So make sure that you plan a route. So what I do is I kind of make a plan the night before, so I know what time I need to get up. So that kind of makes me aware of the time that I need to go to bed also. So if I need to be at the first sale at 7 a.m., I'm not staying up until midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. Your girl needs her sleep. Definitely make sure that you are one of the early birds there. You want to start early and hit up the ones that open the earliest. And if possible, I kind of like to start the farthest away from my house and work my way back. That is, I think, something that not a lot of people talk about maybe, because at the end of the day, I'm tired. I don't want to drive an hour and a half back to my house. I want to be 10 minutes from home. So if it is possible and the sales are early enough, the further away from me, I will try to start there if at all possible. You want to try to be first in line. This is something that I know that a lot of people go back and forth on, but you want to be respectful about the times that people post that they're opening, or starting their garage sale. So if it says 7 a.m., there's going to be people that show up at 5 a.m. and they're going to sit outside in their cars and they're going to wait, or they might not be that respectful. They might just kind of start browsing through your front lawn. I know that it's a little bit more cutthroat in certain areas. Where I'm from, where I live now, if you do that, you will get cussed out and escorted off someone's property. That's just not acceptable behavior. But I know in different areas, especially California, where there's, it's a lot more cutthroat. There's a lot more competition for garage sales, for resellers and antiquers and stuff like that. It's almost expected that people are going to start knocking on your door at 5 a.m. and wanting to go through your stuff. I always try to err on the side of being respectful. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want someone yelling at me, and people just don't do that around here. So I don't want to be the first one that starts it.
So I shared that Casey and I had our garage sale recently, probably a month ago. So the only thing with posting what time you're going to have it, you better be out there. So the next morning, we didn't realize that our tenant that lives on the property, he posts all the time on these Facebook groups, the buy, sell, trade, because he has his own window cleaning business. Well, we didn't realize that he had posted that it was going to start at this time, and we're setting up and that we have our gate closed so nobody can come in. There was a couple that pulled up. The woman was so unbelievably rude. She's like, "Are you open?" And Casey's like, "Give us another 10 minutes." And she got mad and stormed off. And Casey was like, "Okay, if you want to, just come in then. That's fine. Whatever." But then later we realized, oh my goodness, we posted that we were going to open at that time. Definitely know, if somebody's going to say what time, there's going to be that person that's definitely going to be on time or a couple minutes early. And I think that is kind of what happens out here, is you have a lot of people that see what you have and they will definitely come early. That's just one thing to think about, but I just thought that was a funny story because that woman, I was like, oh my gosh, it's a garage sale lady, chill. And if she would have said, well, you guys said you were going to open at this time, we would have been like, oh my gosh, we would have put two and two together. But at the time, we're like, let us set up our stuff.
Yep, exactly. Some people have no chill when it comes to yard sales.
One thing that's really big out here are community garage sales. And I think because it gives the community a time where they can have random people coming in. A lot of them are patio sales, 55 and older communities, where you might have a gate to get in. So this gives them the opportunity, okay, so many times a year, we're going to offer the community patio sale, and then they can keep their gates open and people can drive through and kind of shop around. Or you see neighborhoods with HOAs, they always do a community garage sale, which is nice, but that's another thing to look at. And a lot of times they might not post on social media, but it might be like in front of where the community is. So look for signs. Like I know when you're going into a subdivision out here, you might see a sign that says community-wide garage sales, and it'll give you the information of when it is. But that's definitely a good way to hit a lot of them in a very short period of time, and you're not having to drive around. Sometimes you'll have people in those communities where literally they have like 2 tables, but then other people are definitely dedicated to their community garage sale.
Yeah, I agree. I love looking for those community sales. It gives you a lot of sales to hit in like you said, a shorter amount of time. You're not getting in and out of your car constantly. You can kind of park your car in a central location and walk, from house to house. And that kind of ties into the next tip that I have for you guys, is to make sure that you're bringing reusable bags to carry with you. So a lot of the sales, garage sales and estate sales, they're not going to provide you with a bag or a box to put your stuff in. And if you've got like an armful of clothing or shoes or electronics or whatever it might be, you got to walk back to your car with all that stuff. And if you wanted to hit up the next house, let's say you are at a community sale, you want to hit up the next house, then you got to walk all this stuff back to your car because you don't have a bag or something to put it in while you go on to the next sale. So just make sure that you're prepared with stuff like that. And if you, see a sale and you're planning on buying a lot of stuff that you see, posted, and you get there on time and all that stuff is still available, you want to make sure that you're prepared with like a way to transport that stuff home. If you're, let's say, looking for furniture or bigger electronics or something like that, don't rely on the seller to hold your item for you. Like, just there's miscommunications that can happen, and someone might, bribe them and say, well, I'll give you, another $50 for this dresser or whatever it is. Then you lose out on the item and it just costs you your time. So just make sure that you're ready and prepared to take the items that you purchase as soon as you purchase them, and don't rely on someone to hold the stuff for you, because sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. You
can always bring like IKEA bags are really good because you can fit a lot of items in it. Or think about getting like a little wagon that you can then pull and put your items in, and then you're not having to like hold on to them while you're, shopping. Just make sure that you're watching the wagon so nobody goes in and tries to buy stuff out of your wagon. But maybe you could make a profit on that. Who knows? But yeah, I like the idea of you have to be prepared. And even like when you're going thrifting, we always bring reusable bags because we just know like we don't ever want to be in a position where we have to make about 10 or 15 trips to the car. So definitely reusable bags. That's a really good tip. I know I do when I have a garage sale. Sometimes I'm like really lazy and I'm like, I'm just going to throw everything in this box and I'm not going to even like put it out on the table. So definitely look high and low. Don't be afraid to dig through the boxes. A lot of people, when they are going to garage sales, they're just going to kind of graze over and look. They're not really going to dig. But I know there's been a garage sale where I did do that, and I ended up finding a really nice pair of shoes that were at the bottom, where if I would have just passed over it, I wouldn't have seen those items.
Yeah. And, the more you go to garage sales, the more you're going to see that everyone sets their stuff up differently. And it's kind of funny. So last garage sale season in New York, I had a route planned, and it kind of seemed like I was on the same path as there were like 2 other people. There was a family, and then there was this one like guy who was probably like in his 50s, and you could tell that they were all resellers of some nature. So we ended up going to like the same 4 or 5 garage sales like all in a row. Like we were all getting there kind of at the same time. In watching these people, the last one, the single gentleman, he kind of he like parks his car, he walks up the driveway, he kind of pokes his head around, like looking around, looking at things, like peeks in the garage, and he like kind of shakes his head and then like walks off back to his car. It wasn't worth his time. And maybe it wasn't, but he, like you said, he was just doing kind of a once over, and that could be a good strategy if you're looking for something really niche or really specific, like video games or electronics or books or whatever, your niche is. If you don't see any of those items, then yeah, definitely, move on to the next one. But if I'm not on a time crunch, and because I'm a little bit of like an everything seller to an extent, I'll dig through whatever, I'm going to go through those boxes. Like you, I have found some very good items at the bottom of those boxes, at the bottom of those bins, digging through tables of clothing. You just don't know what's there until you put your eyes on it, basically. The next tip is to not be afraid to cut your losses. Don't be afraid, like I said before, to move on quickly if you don't see anything of value in the first couple of minutes, or if it's clear that the seller isn't open to negotiating, or for an example, if you see eBay listed printouts attached to every single item, they want the listed price for every single item that they're selling. More often than not, that isn't going to be worth, spending time on and trying to negotiate with those people. If they're just set on their prices, they're set on their prices. If they're too expensive for you to be making a profit on, if they don't meet your sourcing criteria, then I say it's just better to move on to the next one. Keep it moving and not get dragged down by anything like that you might think of as a negative experience. So it doesn't ruin your day or anything like that.
And you can definitely tell when it's a reseller having their garage sale. And out here, there's, I swear, professional garage sale people that legit have a garage sale almost every single weekend. I feel like the fancier the sign, that's a sign that they have done a garage sale over and over again. But another thing that people do out here is they buy storage units out and they legit take everything out and just throw it in their yard. There's a lot more yard sales out here than quote unquote garage sales in a garage. So yeah, that's something to also be aware of when you're going. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to get anything, but sometimes with them, I feel like they're a lot higher priced. We went to one and it was set up so organized. They had their clothing section, they had their kitchen. It was like a mini thrift store, but the prices were more than Goodwill.
Yeah, you're definitely going to see that sometimes. And like you said, it is pretty obvious when it's a reseller trying to offload, some of their stale inventory or inventory maybe they're a little bit too emotionally attached to. Yeah, so that's something to keep an eye out for sure.
Now, I like this next tip. So if you see something you specialize in, like video games, or notice the seller is wearing vintage t-shirts, ask if they have more, because they might have some that they didn't put out. And I think this was a tip that Rally Roots put out. I feel like it was with vintage t-shirts. They had found a garage sale and this woman was talking about how her husband had this I think it was Harley Davidson collection or, something like that. They asked about if they could purchase more and they ended up making a deal. So you never know what people have that they don't have set out. So that's just another tip when you're going to garage sales.
Yeah, I've gotten a ton of inventory this way. Actually, if I see video games is a really good example, and that's something that I've personally had happen before. So seeing a video game console, I think it was a Wii or something like that. They had, I don't know, a couple of video games out, and maybe I'd missed some, in the people that had come to purchase before. I'm not really sure. But I asked, do you have any other gaming consoles that you're looking to offload, or old Ataris or anything like that? And the guy was like, actually, I do have an Atari, but I didn't think anyone was going to want it. It's so old. And I have this guy had 75 games and they were all beautifully organized. It was a gorgeous system, hardly used. He just had it in a box ready to donate to Goodwill because he didn't think anyone was going to want it because it was so old. Oh, no, I'll take a look at that. No problem. And then he ended up giving it to me for so cheap. I think I paid $10 or $15 for that entire lot of games and the system. He had a ton of controllers. I don't even remember what was all in the box. It was a huge box. So it never hurts to ask. You just don't know what people have. And a lot of people, they also don't know what they have. They don't know what's worth money to us and to other people. They might think it's complete junk. My mom and dad used to, I've mentioned this before, but they used to clean out estates and they sold on eBay. They also had an antique store that they ran for a number of years. People would ask them all the time, what if something was worth something, or to come clean out an estate and whatever, they'd be in negotiation with a family. For instance, if a parent passed away, they were older and the kids would contact my mom and dad. So they would get there sometimes and there'd be a dumpster on the property already. And my dad's heart would always sink. And he's what'd you guys throw away? And I'm like, oh, we just went through a bunch of stuff. It's just junk. It's garbage, just trash. No, we'll be the judge of that, you know, like so many times they would throw out things that they thought were completely worthless that actually had incredible value. So again, you know, one man's junk is another man's treasure. And that is so true in this business.
And then going off of that, a lot of people get overwhelmed. It's a lot of work to do like a garage sale or an estate sale. It is a lot of prep. And I think once you start, then you're like, oh my gosh, so much work. I used to price all of the items and put a price tag on and have it nice and neat. Now I'm like, everything's for sale. Everything's up for negotiation. Realize that people do get overwhelmed with that kind of stuff. And like you said, with the dumpster being on site, they were probably thinking, how am I going to get rid of all this stuff? But when people are in that situation, it's easier to negotiate and to be able to get better deals.
All right. So the next tip is that you should definitely be open to making connections when you go to these garage sales and estate sales. If you frequently go to sales like this, you're going to start to pick up on, like Liz said before, people that are having garage sales like every weekend, every other weekend, once a month. You're going to like get to know the usual suspects and like the type of inventory they have, especially if they're resellers, you know, like she mentioned, that are trying to offload inventory that they might get from storage units or whatever. So I actually made a really great connection with someone at a garage sale that I went to my first year living in Saratoga. For those of you that don't know, Saratoga, New York is like really well known for this like racetrack. It's a horse racetrack, and like people are just wild about their horses around here. There are some really, really, really nice areas of Saratoga. There's some really wealthy people. Bobby Flay hangs out here. It's crazy. Especially in the summer, there's just some like really wild things that go on, and the garage sales and estate sales can be amazing in this area because there's a lot of like, again, really wealthy people. I came across this lady who was having a garage sale. She was actually at her friend's house, and I'm still not 100% sure how she acquired all of the things that she had, even after knowing this woman for multiple years now. But I walk up, I park my car, I walk up, it's in front of like this wicked nice house and like a really great, area of town. And this lady's got like metal clothing racks out, like everything's on hangers. There are shoes and shoe boxes still. Things are new, like brand new, shiny, sparkly. She's got some really good stuff here. There's a couple bins filled with shoes, and I'm like looking through those bins, and they're all like brand new. She just ran out of space on tables to display them. She comes over, she sees me looking through stuff. She comes over, we're kind of talking. She's very nice, very friendly, like super easy to talk to. I kind of just got the vibe that I could tell her, I'm like, listen, I sell stuff on eBay and Poshmark. What would you want for all of this? And I pointed out what I wanted. There were 2 clothing racks full of stuff, and I think I got like 5 bins filled with shoes. And she's like, oh my, I don't even know. Like, she had no idea what she would want. And there were like, a couple other tables with items on there, like some purses and stuff like that, sunglasses. But at that point, I wasn't super familiar with more of the accessory kind of thing. So I was just going to stick to what I knew. And I looked up, some sold comps on everything, and everything was just like, it was amazing quality, selling for, a great price and would meet my sourcing criteria. So I'm like, well, no pressure. I kind of want to keep looking through the stuff that you have. Why don't you think about it, and come back to me and let me know, your price. She's like, okay. So she, kind of goes back up to the porch, and she's thinking about it, and she's got her phone out, and I can see her. She's kind of doing some math in her head and all that. And she comes back a couple minutes later, and she's like, okay, so she offers me, a price. And one of the strategies that I've always used, especially in like the car business, is like, you don't want to be the first one to throw a price out. You want them to be the first person to give a price, even when, negotiating car deals. So, because then where that person stands, and I don't want to offer something that's going to be super insulting to her. If she's looking for $1,000, I don't want to offer her $100. She's just going to immediately shut down and not want to talk to me anymore. She comes back with her price, and we negotiate a little bit back and forth. And long story short, I ended up getting all of that inventory from her for like $250. I didn't have that much cash left on me. I went to the ATM. I came back, I paid the lady, and then loaded up my car. I had to take a load of stuff home and then come back and get more because I had already got, like, she was my last stop of the day. My car was log jammed, filled with stuff. So luckily she was very understanding, and I lived like 10 minutes away. So I went home, unloaded, came back, loaded up the rest of the stuff, and then went back home. And I was like overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that I got from her. But long story short, we ended up connecting. We swapped phone numbers. She's like, oh, I get stuff all the time. Like, well, call me, text me, let me know, and let's see if we can work something out. So she was a great connection that I had for a very, very long time. She kind of got out of it a little bit and stopped getting the volume of items. We kind of had a little bit of a deal worked out where at first it was kind of like I was going to buy things, off of her and then take them, and sell them for whatever. And then she got some really high end stuff like Gucci, Prada. It was insane the amount of things that she had. Valentino, handbags and shoes and whatever. And I was kind of a poor girl at that point, and I didn't have the cash to front to be able to buy these items from her outright. And I knew that they were worth a lot of money. So we kind of came up with like a consignment sort of situation, and that worked out for a long time, but I wasn't able to sell things fast enough for her, I think. And because they were high end, luxury items, I feel like in my client base at that point, like the people that were shopping my Poshmark and my eBay store, they weren't used to me having those items. Like that's not the stuff that I usually had available. So I was trying to kind of work my way into like the higher end luxury brand, clientele. And I just couldn't do it fast enough for she needed to sell those items faster. So, we kind of stopped the consignment thing. I did buy from her a couple more times. And then, it got to the point where I was like overwhelmed with the amount of inventory that I had. And then 2020 started, and I kind of shifted a little bit anyways into like retail and online arbitrage. But, all that to say, she was a huge connection that I made at this one garage sale that I happened to stop at the end of my day. She was the last one I went to. We made a lot of money together. It was a great relationship, and I still, talk to her. She's a good friend. So you just never know who the heck you're going to run into, really. You just don't know whose door you're going to walk into tomorrow.
Well, and then us having a garage sale, I noticed a guy that came up with a backpack and he had a GoPro on it. Well, hello. I was like, you have a YouTube channel, don't you? And it's him and his wife, and it's all about like retro video games. And so as soon as they came up, they were like, do you have any video games? I'm like, honestly, we don't have any, but we were sharing kind of our tips on the area of where to find certain things. So that was also very beneficial because they suggested a couple places that Casey and I haven't tried yet, but also we connected on social media. They have YouTube, they have Instagram. So I know if we ever come across an opportunity to buy some video games for pretty cheap, and they're the 80s ones or whatnot, Atari would be probably the perfect one. We could probably reach out to them and be kind of like the middleman. You never know when that opportunity is going to come, but I'm so thankful that we met them because it's nice connecting with other resellers in the area, especially ones who aren't afraid of sharing their knowledge that they have. And you never know, down the road, they could reach out to us because we were sharing exactly what we sell, and what we kind of specify in.
Yeah, that's really nice. And I, have mentioned this before, but I feel like there's just plenty to go around. There's no need to like gatekeep everything and keep it to yourself and not share and operate from like a scarcity mindset. I love like helping other people. Obviously that's, why we have this podcast. We both love helping other people and teaching them how to, grow a reselling business. And I think, it's just so rewarding when you can connect with someone else and like swap information and teach each other and help each other. It's a really great feeling.
All right, next up, let's talk about negotiating, because I think that is what's nice about garage sales. You can negotiate price, where if you walk into a retail store or even a thrift store, like there's no room for negotiation. There are some really good tips that you should be thinking about. First off, don't be afraid to negotiate. People set prices on items that might be a little high, but there's always going to be wiggle room. Know the value of the product. For example, we went to a garage sale and this guy had an eBay printout on this like Harley Davidson vintage Monopoly game. And I looked it up and I was like, well, what's the lowest you're willing to go on this? He was willing to go maybe $10 lower, but I knew the value of that. Therefore, I knew if I negotiated, I would have to negotiate down way more so that way there was room for me to have a profit. Definitely know the value of items. Another tip is if you are at a garage sale and you find a bunch of items, try to bundle them and say, what would you charge if I got all these items? Because sometimes running a garage sale, you see somebody with a lot of items and you're like, yes, that stuff's going to go away and I don't have to deal with it when the garage sale is over. I know with those dumb Rae Dunn mugs that I had in excess after they got saturated. The guy, I literally bundled them all together and I gave him a great deal. I didn't get as much as I wanted, but I made money on them. They're not sitting anymore. They're not taking up space, and he got to take them and I didn't have to deal with them. So definitely bundling is a good way to negotiate a lower price. Another tip is to be willing to walk away. You don't know what that guy with the Monopoly said. If I would have I walked away, he could have been like, okay, what are you willing to pay? Could have, been in that situation. I could have negotiated it for what I needed the price to be. So walking away is okay. Know the value of the item because you never want to be stuck with something that you're overpaying for, just like you would in a thrift store, in a retail store. You need to know what's your bottom dollar that you're willing to pay because you need to make a certain profit. I like your tip on letting them be the one to offer a price first. I think that's where Casey messed up at a garage sale. We found these 3 really cool, unique pool cues, and he walked up to him and gave him a price, and the guy's like, I'll take it. And I was like, I would have started so much lower. So had Casey let him give the price first, he probably would have saved a couple dollars per pool cue. Now, Bolo Brenda, she is the best at negotiating. She is a garage sale queen. Cannot wait till she comes out at the end of the month because we are going to hit some garage sales, and I hope Casey learns his negotiation skills from her, and hopefully we can get items for cheaper down the road.
A lot of people I think are nervous when it comes to negotiating. They don't want to make people mad. They don't want to, insult them. But I honestly think that at garage sales and estate sales, they're the perfect places to start with negotiating, to get your feet wet, to get comfortable, because more often than not, people are expecting you to negotiate. So it's really important to keep in mind that, the sellers are trying to get top dollar for their items for the most part. Some people are just like looking to get rid of their stuff, but for the most part, sellers are looking to get the most amount of money that they possibly can for their items, and you as the buyer are trying to get it for the least amount possible and the most amount of items. A sale will happen when those 2 parties can compromise on a price. So it's important to keep, that in mind. Don't feel like you're going to insult someone, and it's all about like how you approach it as well. If you come in hot and rude and you can see that the seller is already overwhelmed and people are hounding them and harassing them and you can tell they're like sweating, they're not having a good day so far, don't add to that stress and that pressure, come in like a breath of fresh air, like talk to them like they're a human being. And if you see that they, they're struggling, like offer to, I don't know, pick up something that they dropped or whatever, just be a normal, decent human being, and they will treat you with kindness and probably give you a great deal on your stuff. Okay. So sometimes you're going to go to, a sale and there's not going to be any prices on items. Other people are very meticulous in how they price items, and everything's going to have a little sticker with the price on it. There's a couple of things that you can do when you go to a sale. And I was a little thrown off by this when I first got to my first few sales and there were no prices on anything. Like, how am I supposed to know if this is going to be a giant, waste of my time? Like, what if they want like top dollar for everything? But again, it's a learning experience and a really great way to get your feet wet and, learning how to handle these situations. So what I like to do in that scenario is I'll bundle, a bunch of stuff that I would be interested in purchasing, supposing that it will be at a price that I can make money on and it meets my sourcing criteria. And then I'll say something to the seller like, what were you thinking if I purchased all of this stuff? And make sure that they can see all the stuff that you're buying from them. And like we mentioned before, let them throw a number out at you. If they say, well, I don't know, what do you think? Like, well, I have a number in mind, but I don't want to, insult you. Like, give me an idea of what do you think? And throw it like right back at them. you just kind of have to be a little like quick on your feet. If they are way off on price from what you had in mind, you can say something like, oh, okay, I actually had, a much lower number in mind, but again, I really don't want to insult you. I'm just going to, put some of this stuff back. 9 times out of 10, they will probably say, well, what did you have in mind? Like, tell me. And then you can feel free to give them your offer. Again, we're trying to get things for a price where we can make a profit on them. And it's okay if it doesn't work out. You are not obligated to buy anything at whatever price is put out there, but it doesn't hurt to try to get a lower number. If you still don't feel comfortable with the price that, you're at for the amount that you have, and you saw some more items at that sale that you might be potentially interested in, you can try, there's a couple things that you can try. You can try asking, well, do you have any more items like this, like video games or books or whatever? And maybe they, again, maybe they do. They had like a box set aside for donation that they didn't think anyone would be interested in. So they just didn't even put it out for the sale. Offer to go through it and, you could say something like, well, if I buy more, do you think we could work out a better deal? Just, it doesn't hurt to ask, like, just be respectful, be kind, and ask your questions. And again, keep in mind, they're trying to get the most that they can for it, but if they're having a garage sale or an estate sale, they likely want to get rid of this stuff, and you are there willing to purchase it. So if you can come to a good compromise, things are going to work out in your favor.
When you're at the garage sales, also kind of keep an eye and ear out of the person that's there selling the items. I was at a garage sale and there was a girl that had all these Starbucks cups, and I was going to make her an offer on all of them, but then she was like, firm on price. And I was like, whoa, somebody is not willing to negotiate. Some people want to give you a deal too when there's others around. So if I hear somebody say, oh, I'll just give it to you for this, or, if somebody comes back at a number and they take it, that tells me that they are up for negotiation. So sometimes reading the room is really good, and knowing like who the sellers are at the garage sale you're at.
Yeah. And, when my parents have garage sales, or I used to go with them to flea markets all the time, and they were sellers there. So it was just really interesting to see their dynamic working together, like behind the table. My dad might be a little bit more willing to let something go for a little lower of a price, where my mom is a little bit more strict on what they were offering. If it says $50, she kind of wants $50 for it, whereas my dad would probably let it go for like 30, 35. But he's also a really good salesman, and he might try to like make a connection with someone or get them to buy more items. Well, we actually have this and this and this, and it kind of goes with this. And, I could make you a really great bundle deal if you wanted to take all of them. Like he's kind of thinking like, how can I get them to buy more stuff? So it's just interesting to see like a dynamic between people that are maybe having a sale together, or a husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend. You want to try to find the person that's going to be willing to negotiate with you a little bit more, and sort of avoid the person that isn't going to be willing to negotiate with you. In addition to that, I find that this is more prominent at estate sales, I guess, especially if it's a company, like running the estate sale. If there is a huge line of people, or a really crowded room, like a lot of popular items in one room, and that person's kind of like making the rounds, I will not go up to them in front of a ton of people and ask them, well, what's the best you can do on all this stuff? Like, I'm not going to ask in front of everybody, because I don't want them to feel pressure in giving everyone else a great deal too. Like, maybe we had a conversation when I first came in the door and we get along really well. I kind of feel like maybe they will give me, a better deal than what is priced on the item. But I don't want them to feel like they have to give everyone a deal. If they offer me, let's say, 30% or 40% off what's listed, then they're going to kind of feel like they have to give that deal to everyone that's also in earshot, and you don't want to put that on them, basically. So I'll try to ask them like quietly, or in a different room where there's not as many people around, so they don't feel that pressure. Something that I've done, I think, twice now, and it hasn't been recently, but in the last like couple years. Both times I was working still in the car business. So on my lunch break or something, I would see an ad like on Facebook advertising the garage sale, and I'd look through the pictures and kind of look up their address and stuff and see like what the neighborhood was like. And I'm, judging the book a little bit by its cover, sure, but I want to know if it's going to be worth my time even making this offer. I'll reach out to the person and say, I am very interested in a ton of the items that you have for sale. I was wondering if maybe I could, if you're open to this, if maybe I could stop by like later today on my way home from work, check out the items that you're planning on putting out for the sale, and maybe we could come to some sort of an agreement and I can purchase everything from you and take it off your hands for like one like bulk price. And then you don't have to, spend your time on Saturday running the sale and dealing with a bunch of other people. And that has worked out for me. I've sent a couple messages like that. And like I said, it's worked out twice where I've been able to do this. It worked out pretty well both times, I guess. It's a lot of work. If they have a lot of stuff, and it does kind of put a little bit of pressure on you to, I guess, take everything and purchase everything. So there's a couple things that you need to keep in mind. You have to have the space to be able to store this stuff. If you're going to purchase all of their items, you need to have transportation for it. So if they're selling bigger items, you need some way of getting this stuff back to your house, the manpower to move these items, the money to be able to make a bulk purchase, and the time to go through it all and sell it in a way of like getting rid of it. So if there are some items there that aren't going to fit the selling platforms that you sell on, how will you offload that inventory that you're not really interested in selling piece by piece, for example?
Well, and with going with what you just mentioned, also another tip that just came to my mind. So if you went to a garage sale and you know that it was a good one, try to find the post the last day or like on a Sunday and see. A lot of people, what they do will update the post on the garage sale and they'll put free items. So anything that they have left over, they'll say free, come and take it. So that's another thing that you can do. Or also try to make friends with that seller at the garage sale. And if you feel comfortable, you could say, what were your plans on getting rid of all the inventory when you were done? I would be interested if you were wanting me to take anything that's left over. So there are ways that you can kind of negotiate buying out the garage sale or getting the stuff for free.
And the very last tip that we have for you guys is more to do with estate sales. And it's just kind of something to look out for. And I guess, this could potentially happen with garage sales too, but I find that it happens a lot less. So with estate sales, you're going to have, like the usual suspects in your area, the people that run the estate sales all the time, companies more often than not. You'll get used to what their tactics are in advertising and their pricing strategies and all that good stuff. Something to watch out for. There was actually a very recent example of this that I ran into. So in my hometown, this restaurant that was in business for years and years and years went out of business. Like the owner retired, and they had a lot of very cool antiques inside of this restaurant. So they decided to have an estate sale, and they hired a company to run the estate sale for them. The company that they hired to run, my mom and dad were very familiar with in, from years past and running their own business and going to estate sales that this company ran. What they found was that their way of advertising was a little shady, I suppose. This person would post photos of items that maybe were available at one point, but that they actually would pre-sell to other people. And they were like the popular items that other people would want to go to the estate sale to purchase. In this example, my mom actually went to one of the estate sales that this company ran many, many years ago, and they were there for something specific to purchase. She was the second person in line that day. They went in, her and my dad went in, and the person that was in front of them went to one room. Her and my dad went to a different room where this item that they were looking to purchase would have been. And that's where it was in the photos and everything. And there was already a sold tag on the item. So they went up to the person running the estate sale. They're like, we were here early. We were the second person in line. Like, how is this sold already? And the company, whoever was running it, this person said, well, it already sold. Well, how is that possible? Today's the first day. We were the second people in line and it's already somehow sold. So a lot of these estate sale companies will have, they'll have their people for various items like furniture, electronics, clothing. So then they don't get stuck with a lot of the items. They'll pre-sell those items to their, their guy, their person that specializes in whatever that niche is. And they'll pre-sell the stuff to them. So then they don't end up stuck with it, basically. It's just something to watch out for if you're going to start doing estate sales. I don't want to say that it happens all the time, but it's just one of those things to be aware of. There's other tactics that they use as well. You just want to make sure that you're keeping your eyes open and being aware of what's going on in your area.
All right, guys, that's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Paycheck to Daycheck Reselling Podcast.
Anything we mentioned in this episode will be linked down below in the show notes or description down below.
Be sure to share this episode with anyone you think it will help and follow us on social media at P2D Podcast.
Thanks again for listening. Keep working towards that Daycheck.